Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I wanted to return to a subject I've talked about before, but in a different manner. And this is like, why should you play Lamentations of the Flame Princess? Why is that a good idea? So I'll tell you why. A lot of people kind of misunderstand what the game actually is, and because it's a few different things, depending on what you want to do with it. It's called weird fantasy role playing. You don't have to play it that way. There's a part of the game that's the setting, and as with any game, if you play D&D, you didn't have to play Dragonlance or Greyhawk or any of those things. You could do whatever you wanted to. But there is kind of a setting that a lot of the modules and stuff are written for, and it's kind of like Europe around 1300 to 1700 ish. Um, so if you don't like that, don't use it. So that's not really what Lamentations is. It is also not weird fantasy role playing necessarily. Doesn't I'm a member of a Facebook group about the game, and most of what people publish or post rather on there is some like pretty horrific pictures, and most of them are rather comical and cool. But the game doesn't have to be Cthulhu-esque or filled with horror. But that's part of the vibe if you want to do it. Um, so what the heck is it? There's part of the game that's just a gaming philosophy. And there is a DM's guide. I don't believe it's actually available in print. Again, I think it was in print and then it wasn't. So there's a PDF you can download. But a lot of it's the gaming philosophy part of it is just like how to run a sandbox and then the pros of running a sandbox, which I happen to like quite a bit. No surprise. Um, Also, the gaming philosophy that like things like monsters should be really unusual. There is no monster manual. There's no bestiary for Lamentations. You shouldn't have. In his estimation, the party runs into an Umber Hulk. It runs into like some horrific monster, and this is like a one-shot deal. I like that because sometimes less is more. You don't need a bunch of orcs and goblins and hobgoblins necessarily. A lot of your humanoids can just be humans, and then the really weird and unexpected happens. So I kind of dig that sort of idea. The other gaming philosophy I've talked about a little bit before is kind of limiting the inflation of things like hit points and armor class and whatnot. Only fighters go up in attack bonus, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because then for the most part, you're not dealing with all this crazy range of armor classes. Um, so that's part of what Lamentations is. However, to me, the biggest selling point, like why would I want to play that game, is this is the slickest adaptation of the BX rules I've ever seen. You know, um, Something like Labyrinth Lord is just absolutely, that's what BX was, and which is great. Something like Basic Fantasy Role Playing Game is kind of a modernized version of that and kind of streamlined a little bit more, which is also a great game. I'm not knocking either one of those. I actually, like them both quite a bit. Lamentations, James actually put in some really cool rules modifications in terms of things like encumbrance, and I've talked about that before. Splitting up the spell list entirely, so there are magic user spells and cleric spells, and they do not meet. That's actually really cool. The more I look at it, the more I like it. I've used it, but I used to be a little bit taken aback by it, but I kind of like that. Shtick. There are some spells and they're a little horror based. You don't have to use them, or kind of scale them back or whatever. But it's just probably the slickest adaptation of the BX rules, in terms of being able to understand right away and be able to play. He's modernized a few of them as far as like armor class or whatnot. But it's a very playable game, and it's I hate to say it, but it's kind of like in a lot of the improvements he's made or modifications, what BX could have been if they just kind of tweaked it a little bit more, if that was the direction D&D went in. So that's why to play it. You don't have to like weird horror fantasy. It's not always my thing. You don't have to like old Europe, because I don't. But it's the slick game engine. That's what I like. That's why you should play it, or at least give it a shot.